They thought I'd beg. Instead, I walked out and let the fuse burn. My name's Mark Hensley. I'm 43. I live in Denver, Colorado, in a 2-bedroom apartment that overlooks a gas station and a pawn shop. Not the kind of view you dream about, but it's quiet. And after 16 years at Devlin Systems, quiet started to sound like a luxury. That afternoon, I was heating up leftover chili in the break room microwave, the usual half-burned, half-frozen routine, when Kelly from HR stuck her head in. "Hey Mark, got a sec?" She said it real casual, like she was asking about my weekend plans. But everyone in tech knows what "got a sec" really means. It's the corporate version of a last meal. They gut you and then offer you a mint afterward. I followed her down the hall, past the same network closet I rebuilt after the outage in 2022, past the intern desk where I used to sit before I got my first title, past a group of guys I had mentored last year, now too polite to make eye contact. We ended up in the small conference room, the one that always smelled like printer toner and stale endings. Joel from accounting was already there, pretending to read something on his laptop. Kelly sat on the edge of the table like this was just another Tuesday. "Company's restructuring," she said. I didn't say anything. "Your role's being sunset." Sunset. Like I was a bad vacation package, a legacy product they couldn't sell anymore. Joel cleared his throat. "We know this is tough, Mark, but we'd like to offer you a soft landing. There's an opening in facilities support. Part-time, maintenance, light janitorial, you'd still be on the team." I looked at him. Joel couldn't even meet my eye. He knew. Everyone in that room knew. I'd rebuilt half the back-end systems they still ran on. I was the guy who stayed overnight during the data center migration. I was the one who talked legal out of an API nightmare when the contract team didn't catch the vendor language. And now they wanted me to clean up spilled coffee in the break room. I laughed once, just one sharp, involuntary bark. "Pass," I said. I took off my badge, the same badge I'd used for 16 years, and placed it gently on the table. Then I turned and walked out without another word. They didn't call after me, didn't stand up, just sat there, waiting for me to close the door so they could get back to their real jobs. I walked down the hall slower this time, taking it all in. The flickering light by the printer I'd replaced 6 times. The weird floorboard by the vending machine that always squeaked. The post-it still stuck to the server room door with my handwriting from 3 years ago. I'd always told myself I was part of the foundation here, but they'd decided I was disposable. By the time I reached the parking lot, I knew I wasn't going back. Not for my mug, not for my backup drive, not for the company hoodie they gave me after 10 years. Devlin thought I'd crawl. Instead, I went home and waited for the fuse to reach the powder, because that night, I got the email. And that was when the whole thing started to burn. Got home, poured the last of my Jack into a coffee mug, and sat at the kitchen table like I was waiting for a storm that already passed. My apartment was silent, dim, and clean. In that way apartments get when you haven't been home enough to clutter it. I kept telling myself I was fine, better off. But I couldn't shake that hollow, slow burn feeling in my gut. Then I opened my laptop. There it was. One new email. Subject line. Looking for ops insight. Interested? The sender was Blake Hanley. I hadn't seen that name in years. We met at a vendor summit in Austin back in 2016, 2017. He was the only guy at that entire conference who seemed more interested in back-end protocols than happy hour mojitos. I remembered he asked sharp questions, smiled like he was 5 moves ahead. I clicked. "Mark, got a side firm doing due diligence on a possible acquisition. We need someone who actually knows how enterprise ops really work, not just what's on paper. I remember how you think. You interested?" "Blake." I stared at the screen for a second, then typed one line. "What kind of work?" Next morning, I woke up to a reply, a DocuSign link, and a note. "NDA first, then I'll send you the keys." By nightfall, I had signed and submitted. And less than an hour after that, I was staring at a familiar name on the secure portal. Devlin Systems Parent Holding, Preliminary Audit Package. I actually laughed out loud. He didn't know yet, but I was about to become the grenade in Devlin's merger. We jumped on a Zoom call the next morning. Blake looked the same, minus the tie, plus a little gray at the temples. His camera was off at first. When it flicked on and he saw me sitting there, he smiled. "Well, damn," he said. "You really signed fast. I've got free time now." He chuckled. I'm hearing Devlin's a piece of the puzzle we're considering. Their parent group is the actual target. But their stack's a black box. You ever cross paths? I took a slow sip of coffee and shrugged. I worked under them for 16 years. His eyebrows lifted. Seriously? They sunset me last week. Jesus. No big deal, I said. Just gives me time to show you where the bones are buried. I wasn't lying. I pulled up the initial audit they had, the one Devlin gave their buyer. It was a joke. A couple of diagrams, a PDF with mismatched license reports, and a summary that was at least 2 fiscal quarters out of date. I knew more from memory than what they had uploaded to their data room. I started pointing things out on screen. That system here? That's not where their actual inventory runs. That connector hasn't been functional since 2021. That API is still unsecured, and I laughed. That backend you're showing on page 6? That's the mock-up I made in a hotel room in Vegas 4 years ago. They're still using the same image. Blake whistled. You're not just familiar with the system. I built half of it. He grinned. You're going to make my legal team nervous. Good, I said. They should be. An hour after that call ended, I logged into one of Devlin's vendor portals just to check something. Didn't expect anything to still work. It had been 4 days since the chop, but my credentials still active. Same 2-factor prompt, same token server, same breadcrumb trail. That was the moment I realized. I was already inside the system before they even knew I was outside. They wanted someone who could dissect the tech stack. Instead, they got the guy who stitched it together with caffeine, sweat, and too many weekends no one thanked me for. I clicked out of the audit portal, opened a clean folder, started taking notes. And just like that, I was back inside. Only now I wasn't fixing Devlin's systems. I was pulling the pin, logged in like it was any Tuesday. Same password I'd had since the Jenkins rollout in 2019. Same 2-factor code sent to the same cell number they'd sunset the day before they sunset me. My guess? They flagged me for deactivation next quarter. Devlin never was fast about cleanup, unless it made for a good headline. I didn't poke around much at first, just ran a quiet crawl on the internal contract archive. The audit trail was a mess. Most files hadn't been accessed in over a year, which meant no one had been paying attention to the fine print, which, funny enough, was always where I kept the sharp stuff. I searched for vendor terms from 2017. That was the year legal, and I had gone back and forth for months over language I insisted we include. They hated it. Said it was paranoid, redundant, obstructive. I fought tooth and nail until they finally caved. And there it was, buried deep in the master vendor agreement, clause 12. B. In the event of ownership transfer, all existing vendor rights must be renegotiated under original pricing structure and mutual written consent. Plain English, if Devlin got acquired, every single third-party deal they relied on, infrastructure, licensing, middleware, had to be re-signed at the same rates and only if both parties agreed. There was no auto-transfer. No clause to roll it over, no fallback. It was a legal landmine, and the moment I found it, I felt something inside me settle. Not revenge, not anger, just certainty. This wasn't a vendetta. It was a forensic exam. I saved the PDF, added the clause to Blake's shared repository, and flagged it Tier 1 acquisition blocker. Added a note, Clause 12B, hidden in vendor framework, built to prevent silent rollovers. Will trigger manual renegotiation on parent acquisition. Critical. Then I opened a blank video doc and started mapping the network. Not the sanitized version Devlin gave their buyers, not the slides from the outdated data room, the real thing. From memory, I built a new network diagram from scratch, down to switch subnets, vendor dependencies, and every brittle API connection they'd been duct taping since the Q3 rebuild in 2020. Flagged every fault line I remembered, the undocumented handoffs, the orphaned integrations, the buried overrides they never patched. It took me all night. When I was done, I stared at the diagram, a patchwork of color-coded pain, and saw it clearly for the first time. Devlin didn't just have tech debt, they were drowning in it. And their name? Still on the old architecture files. System owner, M. Hensley DevOps, 17, my initials, my name, still binding, still legal. Blake pinged me the next morning. Holy hell, where'd you find this? I replied with a screenshot of the clause and nothing else. My clause had just become the nail in Devlin's valuation, and I hadn't even started digging into clause 14 yet. Blake's shared drive lit up like a Christmas tree. Every file I dropped in, flagged, cross-referenced, color-coded, got tagged within minutes. His team was moving fast now. Hungry, legal, ops, engineering, all poking around the documents I'd curated from Devlin's guts. "This isn't gold," I typed in the group chat. "It's gasoline." They didn't even reply. Just a fire emoji from someone on Blake's end named Lauren. She got it. 2 nights later, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my inbox, when muscle memory took over. Without even thinking, I opened the Devlin vendor archive. Still in. Same permissions, same folders, same lazy access controls I'd complained about since 2020. Part of me wanted to feel shocked. Instead, I just muttered, "Unbelievable," and got to work. I opened the current master vendor contract. The latest one, the big file that governed all the major service providers tied to Devlin's infrastructure. PDF, unlocked, timestamp from last quarter. Scrolled past the table of contents. Page 24. There it was. Clause 14, B. Upon change in controlling interest, all active service contracts are to be reviewed and reauthorized with mutual approval. Contract transfer prohibited unless explicitly renegotiated. Same language I'd bled into that contract back in 2015. Back then, I was fueled by fear. Devlin was growing too fast, signing deals without oversight. I was terrified they'd get acquired and we'd lose leverage. So I wrote Clause 14B in red pen, blood, and caffeine. Legal called it excessive. I called it insurance. Now it was a wall of fire. I downloaded the document, ran it through a scrub tool, and wiped my access trail. Deleted the cache, purged the token. Then I uploaded the PDF into Marlowe's shared folder, tagged legal, and added one line in the Slack thread, "They can't sell what they can't transfer." And I sat there, in the dark, watching as the notifications started pinging one by one, like someone had thrown a brick through a stained glass window. From the outside, it probably looked like a normal file update. But I knew what was happening on their end. Someone at Devlin, some junior associate or contractor, was going to get an alert, a ping that something in the shared folder had changed. Then they'd open it, skim to the clause, and realize they were sitting on a landmine they'd never even noticed. 8 years ago, I buried that clause like a loaded spring. Tonight, it snapped. I didn't sleep, just stayed up, watching the Slack thread catch fire. Marlowe's legal team started tagging others. Blake dropped in with 2 words, "Game changer." Then I got the email. Subject line, "Checking in." From Kendra, HR, Devlin. "Hey Mark, hope you're doing well. We were wondering if you'd be open to helping out on a short-term basis. Just a small advisory role during the transition. Let us know if you're interested." Best, Kendra. I didn't open it, just hovered over the subject, smirked, and let it rot. They had no idea yet. They'd fired the guy who built their locks and left the door wide open. One clause buried in boilerplate had just become the fire alarm they couldn't silence. It started with the texts. "Yo, you seeing this? Something's happening to Devlin. Smells like your kind of chaos." I didn't reply to any of them. Just sat at my kitchen counter, pouring coffee into a chipped mug with an old Devlin Systems logo on it. One of the freebies from some long-forgotten company retreat. I stared at it while the world started to burn. Then someone sent me a link. Brian Keller, the CEO, the man who once told me we didn't need to overcomplicate vendor agreements, had just posted a mini essay on LinkedIn. Tough leadership decisions are never easy. But in times of transition, strategic evolution is what sets great companies apart. Strategic evolution. I nearly spit coffee all over my screen. He had no idea, or maybe he did. But either way, he was still trying to spin the wreckage like it was part of some master plan. I took a screenshot of the post, just in case he tried to quietly delete it later, and dropped it into the shared drive. Then I opened a folder labeled Deferred Audits, pulled every report Keller had delayed, dismissed, or flat out ignored during his time as captain of the ship. There were 23 of them. IT audits, risk assessments, infrastructure health reviews. Every single one flagged something Keller had either pushed to next quarter or buried with a "let's revisit later." I packaged them all into a neat zip and uploaded it to Blake's team. Blake tagged it immediately. Neglect-based risk. Tier 1 Bestrei. Internal rot. His team started cross-referencing Keller's posts, the ones where he bragged about leaner ops and delayed capital expenditures. Turns out every self-congratulatory word became ammunition. His own vanity had built the scaffold, and I wasn't even the one swinging the hammer anymore. I wasn't posting, wasn't engaging, didn't leak anything or fan any flames. I just watched as the crack I'd started with a buried clause began to stretch wider. Watched as analysts pinged questions about Devlin's vendor viability. Watched as their cloud migration partner quietly removed their logo from a client list on their website. Then something subtle shifted. Blake's team stopped referring to me as advisor in the shared folders. Started labeling my work under a different heading, operator. I noticed it on a Slack thread one afternoon. Someone dropped a message, check with operator before pushing this to legal. Not Mark, not our consultant, just operator. No one even questioned it, like it was understood now, like that was my role. I was no longer the guy they let go with a fake smile and a facilities offer. I was the ghost in their server, the one who remembered everything they tried to forget. And I wasn't done yet. At exactly 9:12 a.m., Marlowe's final summary landed in the inbox of Devlin's parent board. I knew the timestamp because I was watching the Slack channel like a hawk. Legal had reviewed every line of the PDF 4 times. Blake's team had packaged it neatly, all the risks, exposures, and no transfer clauses I'd unearthed, into a one-click nuke disguised as a due diligence report. Page 17 was the real bomb. Exclusive vendor clauses render contract transfer non-viable. Renegotiation mandatory. Service risk high. That was the sentence that turned their clean acquisition into a legal spiderweb. 30 minutes later, Devlin's general counsel flagged their internal team for a full legacy contract review. 45 minutes after that, an emergency internal legal huddle was scheduled. No subject line. Just confidential, urgent. Then Blake pinged me directly. Blake, you in? I didn't even hesitate. Me, I'm in. We joined the secure Zoom link at 10:47. Marlowe's legal team was already there. 4 tiles, all in suits, dead serious. A couple of names I didn't recognize. One I did, Jenna Ames, Devlin's outside corporate counsel. She had once dismissed my clause recommendations in a meeting as over-engineered paranoia. She looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. I stayed muted at first, camera off. Blake introduced our team. Operator was the name he used when he got to me. No one blinked. When I finally turned my camera on, it took less than 10 seconds before someone leaned in and narrowed their eyes. Marlowe's lead counsel said, "We'd like to walk you through the red flag items from Devlin's historical contract portfolio." They started screen sharing, pulled up one of the archived infrastructure diagrams. My initials were stamped in the bottom corner. M. Hensley DevOps, 17. Another tab opened. Clause 12B, then Clause 14B. All in their original form, all unchanged, all binding. No one said a word until they did. A few legal folks from Devlin began whispering to each other. You could hear the mouse clicks as they opened files, cross-check notes. Then a familiar voice cut through the chatter. Mark? I didn't have to look to know who it was. I turned slowly toward the new tile that had just joined the Zoom. Brian Keller, CEO, my former boss. The man who offered me a wrench and a part-time cleaning job just over a week ago. He was sitting in a home office, still in his blazer, but his tie was gone. His hair wasn't combed. The look on his face was a mix of confusion and something close to fear. He squinted at the screen. Is that you? I looked him dead in the eye and unmuted. Yeah, I said. It's me. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Why are you here? Marlowe's counsel jumped in. Mark is serving in an advisory capacity to our acquisition team. His knowledge of Devlin's systems, contracts, and infrastructure is extensive. I stayed quiet. Let it hang. One of Devlin's legal leads leaned forward and pointed at the screen. Are you telling us this clause, Clause 14B, was authored by you? I nodded once. Back in 2015, redlined it myself after 2 back-to-back vendor failures. And Devlin's legal approved it? They said it was paranoid, I said. I said we'd be grateful one day. Keller sat back in his chair. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right lie to reach for. He whispered it then, more to himself than anyone else. You. He said it like a verdict. Like the realization had just finished dropping. I didn't flinch. He thought he was the only one who remembered everything, but I was the one who documented it, the man they cut loose, overlooked, and tried to erase. He was the reason the glass just shattered. Devlin boardroom. 4 hours of legal wreckage. I didn't say much, didn't have to. The work spoke for itself. Every clause I'd written, every contract I'd tucked away, every overlooked dependency. It was all there, laid out slide by slide, like an autopsy report on a company trying to pretend it wasn't dead yet. The lawyers did most of the talking. Blake's team presented findings. Marlowe's counsel drilled in. Devlin's own legal staff looked like they were aging by the minute. I could see it in their eyes. That dawning realization that everything they had waved off as legacy noise had teeth. Sharp ones. I sat quietly, tile muted, camera on, just observing. Keller sat 3 seats down, shoulders hunched, jaw tight. Every now and then, he'd glance toward me, not to meet my eye, but to check if I was still there. Like he thought maybe if he blinked, I'd vanish again, back into the ether. I didn't. He leaned forward once during a pause and said, "Mark, can I speak to you for a moment? Alone?" I didn't even turn my head. "No," I said. He straightened. "Just for a minute." Nothing left to say. That shut him up. The boardroom went quiet again. No one defended him. No one tried to smooth it over. Not this time. His allies had vanished the moment the numbers changed. And they had changed. Oh, they had plummeted. By the end of the session, Marlowe's counsel delivered the final strike. A revised valuation estimate based on transfer risk, contract volatility, and infrastructure liabilities. The number had a lot fewer zeros than Devlin expected. The acquisition wasn't canceled, but it might as well have been gutted. The stock incentives, gone. The retention bonuses, slashed. The strategic evolution Keller had posted about. Now, a quiet collapse under legal review. When the meeting ended, people logged off fast. Nobody lingered, nobody made eye contact. I stayed, just a minute longer, watching the screen go dark, one tile at a time. Then I stood and walked out of the building. They'd flown me in for this. First class, all expenses paid. Marlowe wanted presents. So I stood in the hallway outside the boardroom for a moment, just soaking it in. The beige carpet, the flickering light near the elevator, the framed photo of the Devlin leadership team from 2016. I was in that photo once. They cropped me out for the version that went on the website. Eventually, I made my way to the top floor, stepped into the same break room I'd heated up chili in 2 weeks earlier, and stared out the window. Same skyline, same view, same silence. Only this time, I wasn't wondering what came next. They once offered me $600 and a wrench to stay on as a janitor. Now, they couldn't afford to buy me back. As I turned to leave, I passed Keller in the hall. He looked smaller somehow. His eyes didn't lift to mine. He was holding a printed copy of the contract summary, the one with Clause 12B and 14B circled in red. At the bottom of the page, my initials. He didn't say a word, didn't have to. He knew.